right. Welcome in, everyone, for another Great Lakes ROTA-RC presentation this afternoon. Welcome in. Today's presentation is from our Know Your Resources series, and our event today is the Wisconsin Office of Children's Mental Health. So today's session is being hosted by our Great Lakes ROTA-RC partner, UW-Madison Division of Extension. So I just want to take a moment to thank our partner for hosting our resource and our presenter today. Before we get stuck into our presentation, we just have a few things that we need to go through. Again, my name is Amanda Kura. I'm the Technical Center's Regional Project Manager. The first thing I want to do is just acknowledge our funder. We are a SAMHSA Region 5 project that covers Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. If you're joining us from outside that region, we're happy to have you. We would like to welcome anybody in who's interested in our virtual education. We're happy to see you. Up on the slide there, you'll see our project website. We'll be talking more about that a little bit later. We'll make sure that you get the details to be able to connect with our website and all of our products. With that in mind, I wanted to show you one of our web pages that has our resources on it. Looks a little bit different than that now, but essentially it has a lot of community toolkits, videos, podcasts, supportive apps, connections to some of our partners. So please, when you get a chance, go check it out. If there's something there that you don't see or that you think needs to be there, make sure you reach out and let us know, and we'll be happy to add it. Next, we want to just set the scene as we move into our presentation today. Again, just preparing ourselves to listen and engage in the session content. So before we begin, we want to take a moment to promote the use of that affirming person-first language when we're discussing behavioral health disorders. As we create that environment of learning together, we want that to feel welcoming and safe for everyone. So we work together to manage that space that supports that non-stigmatizing, recovery-oriented language that can help reduce negative bias and really promote engagement. As always, we invite you to learn about successful prevention, treatment, and recovery from whatever space you're joining us from today, and we welcome you formally into the Great Lakes ROTA-RC community of learning. Let's move now into getting to know our presenter today. Andrea Turtenwald is from the Wisconsin Office of Children's Mental Health. She's been there since 2018, and she's served Wisconsin youth, parents, and families for over 10 years. Andrea's professional experiences include youth development, service learning for military families, as well as providing child welfare case management in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Before recently, Andrea facilitated an evidence-based parent empowerment program and managed a social emotional learning program in 4 Milwaukee schools. Andrea earned her bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse and her master's degree in public service from Marquette University. She's passionate about the work of the Office of Children's Mental Health, in part because of her personal journey with self-harm, depression, anxiety, and an adult diagnosis of ADHD. As a parent of a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, she learns more each day about child development and emotional awareness, or wellness, for both children and caregivers. And Andrea is honored to raise up the voices of those with lived experience as the family relations coordinator with the Wisconsin Office of Children's Mental Health. I turn it over now to Andrea and welcome her into our presentation today.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and it's great to be with you all today. I think the one check-in I want to do is just like a show of hands, virtual, or you can turn on your camera. Have you heard of the Office of Children's Mental Health before, the Wisconsin Office of Children's Mental Health? Yes, you've heard of us, or no, I don't know what this is, and I'm excited to learn more. But I think we're always curious how well folks in the community, even beyond Wisconsin, know about us. So, okay, thanks, Jen. Thanks, Margot. It's good to see a little bit of familiarity, but no worries. If you're not familiar, that's really the point of today's session, is to just let you know who we are and all of the different kind of resources and opportunities that we have within our network, and just hope that you all can leverage some of the opportunities and resources that we have to share, no matter where you're calling from. So the Wisconsin Office of Children's Mental Health, just to quick do an overview, was formed in 2014. So we're in our 10-year anniversary. And really our goal is to make sure that all the different mental health initiatives and programs and things that happen in our state that are concerning child mental health, that they're really more integrated and improved, because we know that our system has some room to be improved. And so we're really trying to help spearhead that effort. The other big thing that we do is establish and track a number of data points. And so I'll share a little more about that in a moment. But so we really try to get out the data, and we try to make sure that folks are working together. This is a helpful visual that our office created a few years ago, but just because I'm not sure how familiar folks are with the children's mental health system more specifically, this is the way that we tried to wrap it up and explain it to people. There's sort of these big main buckets of the basic needs that a family might have, because we know that impacts child wellness. Medical care, that system is often where children and families initially start to receive support for their mental health needs. Insurance is its own little hurdle for families to try to get over and find what can work for them in terms of services or other resources. Of course, treatment and therapies is often what people think of for children's mental health system, but we know it's so much more broad than just talk therapy. Not only are there a variety of therapy options, but there's also just some non-traditional approaches, including just like the moving our body and like mindfulness. There's all different sorts of approaches that can fit into that side of the children's mental health system. There's county and tribal services, so more things that are for higher need children that are administered from the government level. There's also school-centered items. We know that their children spend a lot of time in schools, so school-based mental health is really a burgeoning opportunity for where families can get supports they need. Lastly, we know that a lot of families enter the field in crisis support because they have some kind of immediate need. That's where they may be interfaced with the police or with an emergency department, a crisis stabilizer. So oftentimes a lot of families enter the children's mental health system because of a crisis. And we know that for caregivers and families experiencing children's mental health challenges, it can be a very long, tiring road and feeling very isolated. So we like to acknowledge too that there's this whole other bucket of family support and wellness that's an important component to the children's mental health system, to make sure that there's parent peer support, that there's just peer support for that young person, and that in general there's just some uplifting items that are in there for families that are navigating challenges. So our office really tries to see all of these pieces of the system and think about how they can be more integrated and how they can really be making sure that families and people most impacted are at the center of those systems that they navigate. The other big overarching piece of our office that I want to highlight is our focus on social connectedness of youth. So as I said, we've been around for 10 years. As we were really trying to dial in and think, what is the one thing that we can do to improve children's well-being over the course of our entire state of Wisconsin, we really came down to social connectedness, that if young people felt connected with their family, with their cultural identity, and within the communities that they reside in, within their school settings, with peers or friends, and having a supportive adult outside of their family who they could rely on. When young people are connected in all of those ways, they're able to weather the hardship and the storms that will inevitably happen in our lives. And so we really see this as the upstream way that young people, no matter where you live, can have better mental health, is if they have these positive social connections. So you'll see this theme sort of embedded throughout all the other work that we do and through the resources and tools that we have to offer. But just wanted to highlight this as sort of an overarching theme for us. So I'll start by just explaining what our office is really built upon. The four main pillars are research and data, systems change, youth and family voice, and collective impact. So I'll go through each of these just to explain a little more about each of those pillars. For one, our network has a wide variety of people. We have monthly meetings, the Collective Impact Council, that's had 135 people like regularly attending just to hear about the initiatives and what's happening in children's mental health at a state level. We have, I think the other big one to note here is 75 people who are parents or youth, people who identify themselves as lived experts, who are within our network, who participate in our meetings, who are really trying to stay engaged and inform some of the work that we do. So when it comes to research and data, our biggest kind of piece that we put out to the public is our annual report. We always publish it at the end of that year. So 2023, we just released in December. And that is to summarize what's going on, how are children doing in our state based on the most recent data that we've collected. And so in general, I'll go to the next slide here to just give you a sort of recap of what are we seeing in the state of Wisconsin right now. The areas of concern include a large drop in 4-year-old kindergarten enrollment. We're seeing a decline in youth participating in extracurricular activities. And we know that's a space where people are getting connected to those supportive adults like their coaches, but also connecting with peers. So that's troubling to see that decrease in participation in extracurriculars. We're seeing that vaping is doubling among teens, and I'm sure that is a topic of interest in this community too, because I think vaping is sometimes viewed as like a gateway to other sorts of substance use. And so it's important for us to be examining that and really raising that up. 1 in 10 teens in Wisconsin attempted suicide based on our youth risk behavior survey. And suicide is now the second leading cause of death for 10 to 14-year-olds. So it's quite concerning to see those numbers, and it's important for us to be noting that. The other two pieces worth highlighting here, almost half of LGBTQ youth seriously considered killing themselves, and there's a large increase in young adults with any mental illness. So our annual report really makes sure that we're raising up some of these larger trends that are happening at a state level. Our report goes directly to the legislature in hopes that they will take some policy action or system change approaches. But we also make this widely available to advocates, system providers. You'll see a little more who else our network includes, but we make sure that we get this information out as far as we can to hopefully inspire some changes, because things are not okay. The kids are not all right as it stands. The other big piece of what our office offers in terms of research and data are fact sheets. And so we take deep dives into a variety of topic areas. We really focus on why that topic is of importance, what the research is telling us, both at a national level and at a local level, what helps on this particular topic area, and what we can do. So giving real specific advice to policymakers, to families, to communities and schools. And so these are just a variety of excerpts from our more recent fact sheets that we've done. The one we released just earlier this month in February is around infant and toddler mental health. And so again, this graphic here just depicts that a lot of brain development, it's 80% of brain development occurs between the ages of 0 and 3. So that is a very important time in all human lives that we need to be focusing on front and center and being mindful. So we like to raise up issues like that. We've also focused on adverse childhood experiences. So here we note that if for individuals who have 4 or more ACEs, they are 32% more likely, or 32 times more likely, to have a learning or behavioral issue. We also did a focus on girls in Wisconsin and just the specific challenges that population is seeing in our state. We did a big focus on screening. We're really advocates for universal screening in schools to make sure that kids who are feeling any of these feelings around anxiety and self-harm, sadness, suicidality, that we're able to acknowledge that and find that among students, even if they're not raising their hand and telling a supportive adult or speaking up about it at home, that if we're offering universal screening, hopefully we'll find it out that way. And they say as early as 8 years old, we should start screening kids for anxiety. So I think that's a really important recommendation that we're raising up. And then lastly, we did a fact sheet on libraries and really just seeing that there's a very cool model happening where libraries are the space where mental health treatment is taking place, but also where social connections are being built and really fortifying that space for safety. But also, so this is a quote from one of our lived experience partners, that just like libraries are a space where you can just exist and there are no expectations on things you must complete and do. You are just able to be there, and there's something quite cathartic about that. No external expectations thrust upon us. So this is just an example of some of the fact sheets that we have done just in recent times, but we've been creating fact sheets regularly for the last number of years. So if there's a topic of interest to you, it very well has a fact sheet on our website. So please do check that out if that would be of interest to you. We have just recently started offering a newsletter monthly that highlights just sort of the different research headlines that are coming through about child well-being and mental health. So this is a sampling of some of the headlines that we put out just for February, including findings that are Wisconsin-based, but noting that self-harm increases happen during January and September. So really being intentional in that time of educating family caregivers, but also like school staff, how to support young people in those months and leading up to those months. That 9 out of 10 people who attempt suicide and survive will not go on to die by suicide at a later date. Seeing that Wisconsin is next to last for Black children's well-being. Perceived life expectancy and life purpose in LGBTQ plus young people, and also studies that have found that mentoring during childhood can strengthen mental health. So in short, there is a whole lot of data out here that is on the topic of well-being for children and families. And so we do our best to consolidate some of the new and what's happening in a monthly newsletter. So the QR code is the place to subscribe to it, but I'll also put some links in the chat when I have a moment to make sure you could sign up for that if you'd like to. So the next element I'd like to speak about is systems change. And so I mentioned that as one of our core pillars. We really make sure to identify and amplify and seize the opportunities for systems change that can advance the vision that we have for our state. A big part of it requires just really understanding the systems and how they work. So that's why that visual at the beginning is so helpful for us of like, okay, are we talking about crisis? Are we talking about school services? Are we talking about the insurance system? But in general, our office, we do have challenges in addressing policies and like programs and practices, because our office does not have the ability to like make legislation. But where I think we do shine is often in changing power dynamics and connections and mental models, and really trying to push that information forward, as well as offering best practices. But I've always found this just a helpful visual for any of the work that we do to understand how are we actually addressing the big systems, the big challenges that we face. And so one approach that we have is collective impact. So really the goal here is to bring together folks from all these different fields to make sure that, again, we're improving and integrating state agencies, but that we're also, again, hearing just from a variety of stakeholders. So this is, again, on the image, you can see all the different domains. We currently have more than 200 folks who are attending our meetings and who are working with us on children's well-being. And let's see. The next slide here, we talk about social connectedness of youth. A main way that we convene people is right now on each of these topics. We're just bringing together folks who are interested in the topic and exploring it. So for March, we're talking about supportive adults and thinking about, okay, what are we seeing in our communities around supportive adults? Are we seeing that there's some some deficits or weaknesses? Are we seeing some organizations or programs that are really working well? Let's bring folks together to talk about it and share ideas and information, and hopefully inspire just some local action and conversations on these topics. So these are open invites. We'd love for you to join us in these conversations. These are all data points, like the little text there, making and keeping friends, school belonging, participation in activities, family sharing ideas and talking about things that matter. Those are all data points that we can collect from families in Wisconsin. So we're hoping to really see changes in these data points over time to, again, support the wellness of kids across the state. So our next big focus area is around youth and family voice. And so we define someone as a person with lived experience when they understand that unique life journey firsthand of navigating mental health, substance use, trauma, special needs, and they use their experiences and perspectives to help make the systems better by really sharing their stories, but also helping us be another equal member at the table to strategize and offer ideas and solutions. And so we really believe that lasting transformation at our system level occurs when these wise voices are welcomed and heard. So we make sure to have parents and youth a part of those different councils and committees that I mentioned through our collective impact efforts. And sometimes we'll do kind of one-off events. So actually I'll shift here. Last night and later tonight, we're holding youth listening sessions. And for now, it's on the topic of supportive adults. But this is a sort of takeaway from an event we held in 2021, where we asked young people from across the state about social media. And so specifically, we had, what advice would you give about how to manage social media? And we got these are their like raw answers that young people shared with us. And we found them to be really powerful and like a very helpful resource. So we now made this into a little, resource page that we're happy to share out. But we just want to continue to do this work of asking young people directly on the topics and then uplifting what they had to say. So we're anticipating something similar coming out around our supportive adult conversations on their exact recommendations. But these are some recommendations about social media that we found to be pretty provocative and relevant. Another big piece of what we do around youth leadership is making sure that we're connecting the different schools that have peer-led or student-led wellness programs. So on here, you'll see some of kind of the big players in the space. I know ones that are at a more national level include Hope Squad and Sources of Strength. So really, they're meant to be these groups, whether it could be elementary, middle, or high school, where it's young people who are identified as leaders around mental health and wellness and relationships, to help plan activities for the school, to help build connections with their students and their peers. And so we really like to connect all of these schools together because there's 300 schools or districts in Wisconsin doing this kind of youth leadership. And we want to make sure they're able to collaborate and say, hey, what kind of fun activities are you doing? Or how are you getting student engagement? We've done a couple of virtual meetings with this group so far. And in April, we're going to be welcoming 50 schools, so 50 high schools, close to 400 people at an in-person event from all these different groups to really, again, share ideas and also to have a training about how to talk with their friends who might be thinking about suicide. So we're really excited to continue to support this network of growing school-based, student-led programs. And then the last piece I want to say here before we take a little transition is we have an option called the Lived Experience Academy. And so really the spirit of this is recognizing that those with lived experience should be centered in conversations, but they also need to be supported and they need to feel prepared and confident to be in some of these decision-making spaces. So we offer free trainings and generally we stipend folks for attending these trainings too, just so that they can build their expertise and their comfort level in these topics and ultimately be connected with others of their peers who are parents and young people and hopefully with other professionals too, who they can start to influence or, offer their stories to make a change. So some of our upcoming trainings include implicit bias training in March 2024, and that one is open to the general public. So I'm happy to share that link towards the end as well. But we also have a training on like conversations and how to have just like respectful and productive conversations in April. And then we'll be holding an in-person event in May, really meant for connecting, but also it's sort of like a mini conference. Like folks can pick topics of like how does policy work and how to expand my network. So we'll have all different kinds of topics at an in-person event in May, which will be great. And then lastly, we have a newsletter that just goes out to lived experts. We've got, I think, just over 100 people on that listserv. And really, it's sort of with resources or like, new things that folks should be aware of, articles of interest. And then lastly, I think the big focus is making sure there's system change opportunities in there. So if there's surveys happening or focus groups, or hey, there's an advisory board that's looking for another member, that's the sort of content that I put out into our newsletter. So that's another ask too, I suppose. If you are an organization who's looking for parent or youth input on something, feel free to let me know. And I'm happy to share it with our network of folks who are interested in sharing their perspective. So I'm going to transition now into resources, but I could take a quick pause and see, are there any questions? Is that all making sense for what our office looks like and sort of the work that we do? Because again, the next step will be more of like the tangible resources that you can click the links of and print and share in your communities. So I'll make space for questions or comments.
So far the chat is clear, but I welcome people to unmute if they would like to.
Okay. Well, otherwise I shall continue. So we have a variety of resources. All of them are free, and I think many of them are relatable no matter where you live. So the first one that really has probably been our most popular is called the Feelings Thermometer. We launched this during the pandemic and with great fanfare. We had people requesting them from all over and like thousands of copies requested. The spirit of it is just a visual tool that helps people identify their feelings. First of all, we know that is really important for mental wellness, is just to name how you are feeling. And so then the second half of it is like, what can you do about it? So you've identified that you're feeling anxious, or you've identified you're feeling irritable. Now what? So it offers just a couple suggestions, and of course, folks can go to their own, thing that works for them. But the research really shows us that just identifying how you're feeling, naming the feeling, and naming or thinking of what you can do about it helps to bring us to a calmer state. So it's a tool that we think is really great on a refrigerator or in a classroom for folks to engage with and identify. I'm happy to say that it's been translated into, I think, 10 languages, and we're getting it in Ojibwe very soon too. So we're very excited that this has been so well shared and used. Amanda, love to see that you love it too. So this is one of our kind of flagship and favorite resources. I will say too, it also we have some like a info page about it. So like if we're sharing it with families at like a community event, sort of like a how to use this tool. Because again, it's not all families are used to talking about how they're feeling and like facilitating that conversation. So we have some guidance too on like how parents and caregivers or teachers could kind of host those conversations. So another key resource that's really been widely accessed is called our mental health crisis card. This resource really came out of one of our collective impact teams from a young adult partner who was reflecting on his life experience and said, he identifies as someone with autism and I think bipolar disorder, but that he always struggled with like being able to communicate when he was starting to melt down and like starting to have a crisis. He kind of goes nonverbal in those moments. And he's like, I wish that I had something that like a card, just something I could have held up and said, hey, I need help right now. Like, here's what you can do. And so we made that because the folks at the table were like, yeah, that would be really helpful. And so they're about the size of a business card. And, it's really encouraged that folks would create these on their own or, fill them out on your own. Probably skews a little more towards high school or middle school, but, we think just about any age folks could use this because it helps identify what I need. So just the process of thinking, when I'm about to melt down, what kind of support could I use is a great process. But then number two, I think it can be something that in the future, again, if you're starting to get escalated, you can read it and maybe you'll be reminded of an activity that works for you, or ideally you'll pass it to a supportive adult who's around you and they can help you to start to calm down in the way that works for you. So we really see this as uplifting youth voice and also just something that's really easy and accessible to access. I'll also say we've seen one police department who's started using this for some of their repeat young people that they keep making contact with and who they know are often having kind of mental health crises. They'll have young people fill these out and it'll be saved in their system. So if there's another call for that young person, hopefully the responding officer will see this ahead of time and be able to proactively approach that situation. So we've seen all kinds of cool applications for this. And so that's been really fun to see. So this is another tool that we have in a large poster size. And the spirit of this is offering a roadmap for folks, parents and caregivers who are recognizing that something is going on with their child, but they're not really sure what it is. They're feeling a little stuck, but know that something is amiss, and trying to give them guidance on who you can talk to, how you can start if therapy is the right direction for you, what do you actually say on the phone to start scheduling a therapy appointment, and how can parents be involved in therapy as time goes on. So we do have large posters of this. We'd be happy to mail some out to you all who are live with us. So if you want to type your mailing address in the chat, we're happy to send some to you. Because we've seen these in front offices and libraries and community spaces where just honoring that parents are usually aware that something is going on and they want to help address it. And this was created with parents and with clinicians together. So we're really proud of this resource too. And then one more resource that was created by parents and young people together, we call it our Handling a Mental Health Crisis handout. And so we use this leaky pipe analogy to really provide some tangible suggestions and ideas for caregivers who acknowledge that their child is coming towards a mental health crisis. What can they say and do in those scenarios? Because frankly, when we were connecting with parents and clinicians on this topic and deciding, is this something we should make? A lot of times stuff just says call 911. And we know for a variety of reasons why that does not work for many families, why that's not a great answer. And so we wanted to make sure that caregivers had some clear, concise, accessible, just guidance on what to do. And so again, made with parents. How you're feeling, connect with your child, stay positive and open. And then when the pipes do burst or when the crisis does kind of reach its climax, how can you support by using short and clear sentences, offering safe options, contact the crisis hotline if you have one, or call 911 if that is what you deem to be appropriate. Ask for a mental health crisis worker. And then not forgetting about the repair step. I think often crises happen and then we're past the crisis and time goes on and that's that. But we really want to make sure that there's some repair and attention given to the after effect. And so just making sure that there's reassurance and encouragement, identifying supports that could be helpful for future kind of crises. Again, we mentioned the crisis card, having a plan of sorts for when things might come to a breaking point again. And the flip side of this handout has a ton of different hotlines and resources to contact. And so I think the other piece that I did not say is all of these ones that I just flipped through are available in Spanish and Hmong as well. And we do have some nice printed copies of these too. If you could use some, feel free to share your mailing address in the chat and we'd be happy to get those out to you. And then, but wait, there's more resources. This is one that's technically housed with the Department of Public Instruction. But amid the pandemic, we began creating some classroom lesson plans for 3rd through 5th grade, 6th through 8th grade, and 9th through 12th grade, all on the topics of mental health literacy, with really the goal to make sure that young people are aware of how they can support others, starting to become aware of their own like feelings and how can they take care of their well-being. And so these have been very widely accessed. They've been downloaded in 40 different states from the US. In 10 different countries, we've seen downloads, which is very cool. And over 1,000 Wisconsin school staff have downloaded these lessons. And so the other data I like to mention here is that 87% of parents across the country support mental health education in schools, and 2/3 of young people believe that schools should be teaching about mental health. And so I think that tells us that there is a need, there is an interest. So this is one free way to access this. And we are currently working on smaller activities for the lower grades. So for kindergarten, like K4, K5, as well as 1st and 2nd grades. So those will be released soon. But we are just really excited to be able to offer these free resources around mental health literacy to be used in classrooms. But we've also seen applications in like the out of school time sort of format too. So the next resource worth noting, we have a variety of parenting tips and advice. We had a collective impact team that was focused on infants and toddlers, and they really saw a need in some kind of clear and direct parenting advice. So there's a variety of videos, but also like flyers in English and Spanish on these variety of topics here. I think my favorites are the responding to challenging behaviors and the self-care and self-help. Just really recognizing, like, it's sort of a change in perspective that challenging behavior is communication. So like if we are seeing challenges, let's try to break it down and think, okay, what is this child trying to communicate to me right now? And sort of building the toolbox of parents and caregivers. Like I said in the beginning, I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So like I've seen those challenging behaviors a time or two. And just trying to support and uplift parents, recognizing that it's a tough job and we can use all the support we can get. So some great free resources on our website for that. And then the other big piece I would mention is our trauma-informed care training. So our trauma-informed care collective impact team saw a need for some trainings that could be, again, accessed for free in perpetuity, but with the idea of like focusing on race and culture and collective trauma of COVID-19. So each of these are 30-minute videos. They come with a discussion toolkit. We've really marketed them for staff trainings, but they can be watched by anybody, or anyone can view them. But we've really seen value when it's like a group of people who are on a team together watch it and then kind of have some conversation about it. And it's designed to fit within a 1-hour time period. So we're really proud of that. It's been accessed quite a bit, but I think trauma-informed care doesn't always get connected to these very important and timely topics of white privilege, implicit bias, and working with people of different racial and cultural backgrounds. So we're happy to like put that resource forward for folks. And then my last big resource is we have lots of images. If any of you are the social media connoisseurs for your organization or area, we've done some great work with an organization called Artworks for Milwaukee, who have created this image down here. These are all separate images that they've created around the theme for last year of Pause for a Moment. And then also over on this side of the screen around connecting and like the value of connecting with people. So those are all free and accessible to download and put on your social medias or on your website if you find that to be useful. This one in the center around trauma looks different for everyone. We've had that printed in schools and hung up in schools. That was originally kind of the spirit of that. And then we also have a Pause website attached to our homepage that's about like, again, you're feeling down, you feel like you need a reboot. What are some things that you can do? So some kind of tangible advice that we created in partnership with Mental Health America. So lots of fun resources out here for you, lots of colorful things. All of it is free, free, free. And so I guess my kind of landing thought for you all is just coming back to social connectedness, and that the one thing that we can all do is connect with another young person. Connection is an essential vitamin for our brains and for our bodies and for our heart. And some studies have found too that even in like 40 seconds, less than a minute, our connections with somebody can make a real difference in their well-being and how they feel. So even though the data seems daunting and the resources can be overwhelming, just the spirit of connecting can really go a long way. And so with that, I'm going to land on this little connect with us page too. You can connect with young people, but if you're interested in our social medias, feel free to connect in this way. And I'll just leave this up for a minute and check the chat and see if there's questions or responses or other things you'd like to hear.
Andrea, I'm really glad that you mentioned the 2 products. I mean, you mentioned a lot.
I know there's a lot here.
Yeah, you guys do a lot. And I know as a practitioner, as an educator, I've used a lot as well. But I will say that having now as a state specialist, it's really great to see over time how those products have grown and people use them collaboratively. And like you said, the creative ways that people use them as tools of communication to support youth and young adults, and even adults.
Yep,
The idea
totally.
that these aren't just for kids, it's sometimes just really simple, straightforward ways of communicating mental health needs work for adults too. So I think
Yeah.
they're really lovely tools. And we utilize them too in education to just help get the message out there. And they're just awesome. They're really great stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. And I'll say too, Michelle, I'm seeing your messages in here. When we're talking about creativity and how to apply these, I know some communities have, like, for instance, that accessing services little guide on like how to, again, where should a family start? We've shared the PowerPoint presentation with folks so that they can edit it in a way that would work for their community. So like in our community, you first got to call this person or this place. So like we're happy to share the files so that they can be updated for your local area so that you can redistribute them in a way that works for you. Or just like putting your logos on stuff. We've seen that for the feelings thermometers. Like schools will distribute them with their logo on it, and that's totally fine by us. Like we really just see the value in these tools and information and invite creativity for distribution and utilization. So thanks for making that comment too, Amanda. So yeah, I guess with that, I'm going to pass it back to you, and again, make space for any questions or comments, but I will let you go ahead and close us out here.
Yeah, well, while everyone is thinking of questions or things that they want to share, we'll do our end screen. So thanks again for joining us. If you logged on by anything other than the registration link, that's totally fine. We're happy that you're here, but we do want to make sure that you get your certificate of attendance. So if you came on through anything other than the Zoom link, please email us your full name. We'll get your email when you email us. So if you emailed through someone else's email address, I guess, make sure that we have your email so we can contact you directly. Because again, we want to make sure you get your contact hours and to make sure that you get signed up for our distribution list if you'd like to get our newsletter and find out when we're having other great events like this. Next, we want to make sure that you get an opportunity to complete the survey. It takes about 5 to 7 minutes. If you've done it before, it's not cumbersome, or I mean, it's not like it's terribly difficult to fill out. It is kind of long. It's a lot of the demographic data, but those first 5 questions really help us give feedback to Andrea about the presentation, and they help us as a technical center know what you need as far as professional development training moving forward. So we really find at least those first 5 questions really helpful. So if you're willing to do that, we really appreciate it. If you could take that time to do that. And we'll pop those links into the chat here in a minute if you just give me a second, unless Jen's already done it. Last but not least, upcoming events. We do have the Epidemic of Loneliness coming up on Tuesday, March 12th. If you've been with us before, then you've already met him. You know him, you love him. Dr. Alec Ellswick is back again for a 3rd time. He's a great presenter. Strongly encourage that you join us again. That presentation will be from 10 to 11:15 Central Time. And then we have the last in our Youth Mental Health and Social Success series will be on Thursday, March 20th. That will be 3:45 to 6:15. Ellen Merker will be back again for part 2 in the digital consent series, a part of that series. And that will wrap that series up. It's been a lot of fun. We've super enjoyed doing it. It will be sad to see that go. And who knows, we might have more down the road in the future. So thank you for joining us today. Double check that we got all the links in for you. Excellent. Awesome. We'll pop our links in there. Again, we invite you to pop your questions in the chat for Andrea.
Yeah, and I've just thrown a bunch of links in the chat too. So if you're like me and you just want to click on stuff at the end of the meeting, here you go. All kinds of options for you.
Yeah, take your time to do that. I put Great Lakes email, website, and technical assistance. You have a technical assistance question you'd like support with from the center, please go ahead and click that and fill it out. But if you're just looking to make sure that we have your information for your certificate or you want to email us, that's the first 2 links. And then the last one there is for the survey. Otherwise, if you have no other questions for us and you just want to get on having a happy Thursday, if this is the end of your week, enjoy your weekend. If you're sliding into a happy pre-weekend, enjoy. We're glad to have you.
Should you stop recording?